Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for being here this evening. Let me take this opportunity to thank Baitak and Nehru Centre for inviting me to talk about my paintings inspired by Rabindranath Tagore. My talk will focus on the paintings exhibited in my solo exhibition, Timeless Tagore, in Singapore in May 2011. This included 21 artworks inspired by Tagore's poems, songs, and dance dramas. In this context, I shall also discuss the major influences that helped in developing my art style. Great poet, philosopher, and composer Rabindranath Tagore was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature exactly 100 years ago. All his works are in Bengali. As an educationist, Tagore founded an innovative and unconventional school at Santiniketan, a place near Kolkata in West Bengal. Although I was born and brought up in Calcutta, now Kolkata, my paintings display a style that has evolved through my association with the art and culture of Santiniketan. My grandmother and my mother were both educated in this school started by Tagore. I shall begin with a presentation of 4 paintings from the exhibitions, followed by a brief account of my early association with Santiniketan and the individuals who influenced the artist in me. Tagore lived and worked during a period of social and political changes in India. The dance drama Chandalika, portrayed in this painting, conveys his thoughts against the discriminations caused by the caste system. The dress, dance posture, and the entire composition shows the influence of Santiniketan in this painting. On every slide displaying my works, I have included the English translation of the lyrics used in that particular composition. This painting, done in a different medium, portrays a very different mood. Here I have tried to bring out the devotional spirit of the song Jachilo Kalo Dholo. The mood created by its folk tune has been expressed through the use of dynamic forms and vibrant colors. A completely different aspect of life is the subject of the song in this slide. The composition and abstract patterns used in the painting reflects the joy and the rhythm I feel when I listen to the song. This song celebrates the endless cycle of time. Gramchara Oi Rangamatir Poth is a song which immediately transports one to Santiniketan. The background with the red dusty road and the tall palm trees and the baul singer bring out the rustic feel of the song. These 4 works, done in different media, varying in composition and technique, display a style which reflects my interpretation of Tagore's works. While his writings acted as a source of inspiration for my art, Tagore's Santiniketan played an equally important role in shaping my style as an artist. From a very early stage, my mother nurtured my interest in Bengali literature, art, and music and taught me to appreciate the beauty of nature. My earliest exposure to Bengali literature was through the books for children written by Rabindranath Tagore and his nephew Abanindranath Tagore. Compared to other books for children available at that time, the illustrations in these books were unique in their composition and style. It gave rise to a new brand having a spontaneity, familiarity, and simplicity expressed through a decorative language with a touch of realism. These images have remained inscribed in my mind as childhood memories and have unconsciously emerged in my work. These editions are now out of print, but I have treasured my personal copies through all these years and would like to share some of the beautiful illustrations from these books with you. This slide shows the illustrations from Abanindranath Tagore's Shakuntala, published in 1943. The little details of decorating the hair with flower, the bride's dress, and the facial expressions bear a distinct stamp of Bengal's tradition. These are the images from Rabindranath Sahoj Path, a series of books for beginners by Rabindranath to teach Bengali. The simple day-to-day life in Bengal is reflected in the illustrations by artist Nandulal Ghosh. These two lino cuts by artist Nandulal Ghosh are unique in their style and composition. My first trip to Santiniketan brought to life the stories and the illustrations in these books and the marks left by the artists and the authors on its soil. Let me take you on a quick tour of Santiniketan and its art and culture to give you an impression of its influence on my paintings. It was the spring of the late 50s and I was around 7 years old. We arrived in Santiniketan in the afternoon and from the railway station we took a ride on a Godur Gari or a bullock cart. The slow rhythm of the cart, the red dust rising from the road and the vast stretches of fields disappearing into the horizon created a whole new experience. The sun had set by the time we arrived at our relative's house in Gurupolli, Santiniketan, and we were shown inside the mud huts with lanterns. Next morning, we visited the ashram where my mother did her schooling and the mandir, a beautiful stained glass prayer hall that evoked an atmosphere of peace and serenity. We also took a tour of the artistically designed residences of Tagore, bearing the character and the identity of the place. According to artist Binod Bihari Mukherjee, these buildings are the social representation of Tagore's philosophy and they symbolize simplicity, dignity, and beauty. The open-air classes under the trees was something I liked most. Santiniketan was a striking contrast to the colonial Calcutta I was familiar with. The whole experience left a lasting impression on me. Before I talk about the influence of Santiniketan's art and culture on my paintings, it is important to highlight the contributions made by Rabindranath's nephew Abanindranath Tagore and his student Nandulal Ghosh towards an aesthetic awakening initiated and developed in Santiniketan. In the early 20th century, they led a group known as the Bengal School, which was engaged in evolving a nationalist art movement. This was a marked shift from the Western art being taught in art schools in India and practiced by artists at that time. The new approach towards art, introduced by Abanindranath Tagore, placed inspiration above training, self-expression above technical expertise, and feeling above form. The two paintings shown here, The Passing of Shah Jahan and The Banished Yaksha, are both done in watercolor on paper by Abanindranath Tagore. These display his distinct style of laying the emphasis on mood and emotions. Being both a writer and a painter, Abanindranath's works were dominated by a narrative element and dreamlike images, creating an aura of fantasy. His works range from delicate details found in fine miniature paintings to blended washes of Japanese art and the primitive figure drawings derived from Pottochitra, the rural scroll painting. In these early works of Nandulal Ghosh, one can observe his adherence to Bengal school of art with evident differences showing his own style. These later works display Bose's clear digression from the style promoted by Abanindranath through the spontaneity, boldness, color and vigor exhibited in the paintings. He merged the classical and folk styles by infusing rural life and culture in his art. Nandulal Ghosh's genius and originality was recognized by Tagore, and in 1922 he was appointed as the principal of Kala Bhavan, the School of Arts in Santiniketan. As the principal of Kala Bhavan Santiniketan, Nandulal Ghosh developed a new art style combining several art resources. His unique style developed from Indian art heritage, his visits to the Far East, and his direct contact with nature and rural crafts from immediate surroundings. Under the supervision of Nandulal Ghosh, batik, leather craft, block printing, and Alpona became part of the curriculum. Alpona are designs created on the floor using an emulsion of rice flour in water by the women of Bengal for religious and ceremonial functions. This long standing tradition was given a new form in Santiniketan. Transforming objects of nature into two-dimensional designs of Alpona following the Ajanta style was introduced by Nandulal Bose. This slide displays motifs derived from the flowers Dolonchapa and Polash and his ability to bring out the beauty of nature through ornamental design. In addition to local influences, the education at Santiniketan was also enriched by a variety of foreign cultures and aesthetics. Batik, an art form that originated in Java, was introduced in Santiniketan by artist Surendranath Kaur after visiting the region with Rabindranath. Batik was given a distinct Santiniketan style by Nandulal Bose's daughter Jamuna Sen, and batik saris and scarves are extensively used in the Santiniketan style dress concept for dancers. The dance choreography that evolved in Santiniketan, known as Rabindra Nritya, is a mixture of various dance forms existing in India and Southeast Asia. During his visit to Bali, Surendranath Kaur noted the stage design and costumes of dancers and applied those ideas in Santiniketan. I learned this style from my aunt Sukriti Chakraborty, and its direct influence can be seen in some of my artworks. My aunt Sukriti Chakraborty, standing second from the right, studied art and dance in Kala Bhavan and Sangeet Bhavan, Santiniketan. She toured parts of India with Tagore's troupe as a dancer, something quite uncommon for girls coming from middle class families in those days. I was lucky to be born in a family where an atmosphere of art, music, dance, and all aspects of day to day life ascribed to a style derived from Santiniketan. I learnt dance, alpona, batik, costume design, and stage decoration from my aunt and my mother. Over the next few slides, you will observe my journey as an artist resulting from these influences. This Santiniketan style alpona was done by my mother and me. My mother insisted on freehand style. We used an emulsion of khorimati, a kind of natural white clay in water instead of rice flour, and just a small piece of cloth or cotton wool for applying it. The influence of ornamental designs of alpona can be seen in this painting of mine. Even the way brides were dressed in Bengali weddings mirrored the tradition of Santiniketan and created a new aspect of aesthetics, especially with the laying of chandan on the forehead of the bride. This bride was dressed by me in Kolkata in 1984. A strong aesthetic sensitivity was evident in every occasion in Santiniketan. One such occasion is Vriksharopan or tree planting ceremony. A sapling is placed in a little decorated palanquin and carried to the spot where it is to be planted. This is accompanied by music, dance, and Vedic chanting, invoking nature's fertility and symbolizing its youth. The entire presentation reflects the artistic language that takes it to a different decorative plane. The dancers in this photograph are wearing ornaments made by stitching flower buds of different colors on leaves. Being trained in Rabindra Sangeet and Rabindra Nritya, I performed as a singer and dancer on a regular basis during my youth. My aunt and my mother were always in charge of choreography and dress. They would often refer to ideas learned from their master Mashai Nandulal Bose, and through them I learned the Santiniketan style dress and choreography. Basanta Utsav in Santiniketan, a celebration to mark the advent of spring, was an occasion I loved to attend and used to join in the spontaneous dance in the Amrakunja or mango grove. This watercolor displaying the mood of Basanta Utsav was done by me recently to add some color to the cold and gloomy winter months in UK. One can see here the special dress style of Santiniketan. This is highlighted by the batik sashes hanging from the shoulders, use of flowers as ornaments, silver jewelry, a white sash tied round the waist, and hand embroidered blouses as part of the costume. My mother wanted me to study fine art at Kalabhavan Santiniketan. But driven by my keen interest in science, I studied chemistry in Kolkata and spent almost 3 decades of my life teaching the subject. However, I was always involved in activities related to visual and performing arts. In 2004, my career path took a turn. I left teaching and took up courses in fine arts in Singapore. This involved a few private lessons in watercolor, a short course in charcoal drawing, and a year-long certificate course in basic Western drawing and painting at the Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts, Singapore. 2006 onwards, I took part in art exhibitions in Singapore and gradually developed my own style. I also participated in cultural programs organized by the Bengali Association and Tagore Society, Singapore. In 2006, I directed and choreographed Tagore's dance drama Tasher Desh, and in 2007, Vichitra Ananda, a compilation of Tagore's songs and dance. The photographs from Tasher Desh and Vichitra Ananda display the stage decoration and the dress concept adapted from Santiniketan style. Perhaps this is when I realized my strong bond with Santiniketan and Tagore's work and recognized that it has become an inseparable part of me. The universal appeal and relevance of Tagore's works, even in the present time, motivated me to have my first solo exhibition titled Timeless Tagore on 7th May 2011. This was to celebrate Tagore's 150th birth anniversary, and a series of 21 artworks were exhibited at the Gallery of Ghani Arts, Singapore. Rather than depicting the story or the theme, my paintings display the emotions and the mood expressed in the song or the poem. My compositions display expressionism with a hint of realism in a contemporary style. This song celebrates the fulfillment derived from knowing the unknown, whether it is love between mother and child or between any two individuals not knowing each other. It is the journey from unknown towards known that brings out the joy. I find the melody and the lyrics of the song equally important in creating the mood, and that has been reflected in my work. I would sing the song or read the poem several times before starting my work, and once I start painting, I would be lost in it. This song and the next two songs express a very special emotion which is termed biroho in Bengali, that brings out the deep romance experienced when someone is separated from his or her love. Maranare Tuhu Mama is a song that describes Radha's love for Krishna. At 18, Tagore adopted the pseudonym Bhanusingha and wrote his series of poems in Vrajabuli, an old language derived from Maithili. Here one can see Tagore's idea of merging the infinite with humanity. The style was similar to the Vaishnav Padavali, an ancient text written in verses. I would like to request Dr. Shongita Datta to sing a verse from the song to create the mood portrayed through this painting.
राधा हृदय तो कब होना तोरबे हिय हिय नाखबे अनुदिन अनुखना अतुलन तुहार देह मरण रे तुहु मम श्याम समान.
The song Aaj Jyosna Rate brings out the emotion experienced in anticipation of the arrival of the loved one. My work is not restricted by any rigid formula, and my choice of colors does not follow any rule. My compositions are entirely based on my own interpretation of the celebration of beauty and rhythm. Tagore was in love with nature. This song is one of his most beautiful description of nature. In this work, I have tried to create an atmosphere of rural Bengal. My intention was to start a dialogue between the painter and the viewer. Even if a person is unable to read Bengali or has no knowledge of Tagore's works, it is not difficult to interpret from this painting Tagore's admiration for the dark gazelle like eyes of the village girl Krishna Koli set in a background representing rural Bengal. Through the ages, art has been an expression of something experienced emotionally or visually by the artist, and the personal life of the artist is often reflected in his or her creation. In 1994, immediately after I moved to Singapore, I lost both my parents within a span of 8 months. In a new surrounding, away from home, I found it difficult to cope with the grief. Reading the works of Tagore and listening to Rabindra Sangeet pulled me through this difficult time in my life. It was an association that gave me the feeling of being close to my mother. Through his realization of continuity of life beyond death into the world of eternal joy, Tagore has created in many of his works a subtle expression of bliss which helps in alleviating the pain and the sense of loss. This work and the next one depict the cycle of life and death. In this song, Tagore paints the picture of Nataraj, a form of Shiva dancing his dance of destruction. Through the composition and the choice of color, I tried to bring out the dynamism and the mood expressed in this song. This work also displays my use of decorative patterns done in the Alpona style. Shiva is part of the Trinity worshipped in Bali in Indonesia and exhibits India's link with Bali, which dates back to the glorious period of Indian history. I was reminded of Tagore's Sagarika when I visited Southeast Asia. Through the poem, the poet recalls India's glory that was gone with the advent of the British rule in India. With a heavy heart, the poet regrets his inability to offer anything precious to Bali except his humble music. In this work, one can observe my effort in trying to create the emotion expressed in this poem and interpret its significance in today's perspective. Today, India has revived the mutual respect with this region. My intention was to portray the overlapping of space and time. In the next slide, you will see one of my works exhibited during a ceremony promoting a cultural exchange between India and Singapore. This slide displays my work based on Tagore's poem Where the Mind is Without Fear, exhibited at the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies in Singapore during the ceremony of unveiling of a bust of Tagore gifted to Singapore by the Government of India. Where the Mind is Without Fear is one of the most well-known poems from Gitanjali and is one of my favorite poems. It has always raised questions in my mind about the educational system, politics, and our narrow outlook resulting from various religious practices in our country. Through my work, I have tried to express the hope and the despair I experience when I read this poem in today's context. The second version of the same poem was done by me as live art during the performance of Gitanjali, directed by Dr. Shongita Dotto at ICCR Kolkata on 8 January 2012. I had to convert a 3 feet by 4 feet blank canvas into a painting in 1 hour while the performance was going on. The show was over before I knew it, and it led to the creation of this artwork in a composition differing from the earlier version but displaying the same expression of hope and despair. This is the final piece of work I'll be showing today. It is a different version of Chandalika done with acrylic on canvas. This work was bought by a Chinese art collector in Singapore. It fulfilled my objective in spreading the universal appeal of Tagore's work outside India, and it was satisfying to note that my artwork had the ability to communicate directly to people belonging to different cultural backgrounds. The exhibition was well received, and most of the works from this series are now with collectors in Singapore. I will end my talk with this song from Gitanjali again to express, in the words of Tagore, my realization, and it summarizes my artistic endeavor. Dr. Dotto, will you please sing this for us again? But that's one of the most well-known songs and poems from Gitanjali. I'm singing the original Bengali version.